The dust of the NFL's free agency frenzy has settled, and in its wake, we now have a much clearer picture of how decisions made by the New England Patriots in March may affect their strategy come April's NFL draft. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our mock draft 2.0 here on the Patriots Roundtable Podcast. Alongside Tyler Geis, I am Eddie Murata, and today we are going to be diving in deeper on the impact that free agency will have on the NFL draft with our second mock draft of the season. We'll be introducing trades into this mock draft for the first time, including one that may send shockwaves through NFL circles. But first, we are going to put a bow on the Patriots free agent acquisitions. Tyler, we're back here for another mock draft edition of the Patriots Roundtable Podcast. This time, post free agency. How are we feeling going into this one now that we kind of have a little bit clearer of a picture of what the Patriots are going to prioritize come April?
Well, kind of like we said last week, it was a pretty positive experience, I would say, for the Patriots last week and bleeding into this week. This week, maybe not so many massively huge names, but I still would say pivotal names coming and going into Foxborough. Jack Gibbons being the big one that just broke maybe about 24 hours ago by now, by the time they're recording this, getting a 2-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. So he is out. That is, I think, maybe a somewhat overlooked figure leaving the Patriots, a guy who filled in at linebacker, pretty much was the defensive play caller on the field while he's filling in for Spillane, I believe, for the back half of the season for the most part. And also doing a heck of a job on special teams. I did a piece on that on the site today. And I think, they brought in KJ Britt out of the Dolphins on a 1-year deal. And that's kind of the same scenario. Like we kind of talked about this last week with a 1-for-1, someone leaving, someone comes in to kind of fills that void, even if it's for only a short amount of time. Maybe they're a bridge to what we would see in the draft a few years down the road. We don't know that kind of information yet, but Britt being kind of a linebacker, also special teams kind of player. A few other kind of small pieces being kind of lined up for the Patriots, the last few days, I would say. But all in all, you kind of really see them putting a good big picture together, even though we still have to look forward to the draft. So I like what I'm seeing. The last week and a half, I've really enjoyed what I'm seeing with the Patriots, whether they just kind of be these small key players coming in here.
Yeah, so we did take a really deep dive into pretty much all of the Patriots free agent class in our last week's episode. But Tyler, as you mentioned, there was some roster movement in the last week since we recorded that, with linebacker KJ Britt coming in almost as a 1-for-1 replacement for Jack Gibbons, who just signed earlier today with the Arizona Cardinals. A guy that I was kind of surprised to see go out of Foxborough and leave here after he initially came into the NFL as an undrafted rookie free agent that Mike Vrabel signed in Tennessee. He became a free agent and then comes back to play for Vrabel in New England. Just a 1-year stint for him in Foxborough before he ends up leaving. We kind of saw the writing on the wall with this a little bit earlier on in free agency when the Patriots decided not to tender him as a restricted free agent, but I was still holding out hope, and I thought that the door was definitely still open for Gibbons to make a return even without a tender on him as a restricted free agent. Instead, it seems like that KJ Britt signing will be a direct, like you said, 1-for-1 replacement with Gibbons walking out. Britt, although he didn't play a ton last year in Miami on the defensive side of the football, is a core special teams player and actually got a bunch more snaps in his previous season in 2024 with over 600 snaps played on defense. So it's not like he hasn't seen the field at all on defense, but maybe a little bit more of one of those depth or rotational pieces to slide in behind guys like Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis, which was kind of that same role that Jack Gibbons filled. He ended up stepping up pretty big when Spillane went down with injury later in the regular season for the Patriots. But Britt certainly seems to be one of these, again, one-for-one replacements. As one guy walks out, one guy walks through the door to kind of fill that role. Short money, 1-year deal, and KJ Britt is now a member of the New England Patriots. Other signings that the Patriots made within the last week that we didn't get a chance to touch on last week include tight end Julian Hill, safety Mike Brown, and another long snapper in Nico Lalos to potentially compete, I guess, for the long snapper job with Julian Ashby after he was selected by the Patriots late in last year's draft. Tyler, any people that you want to touch on here out of those three as far as players that were brought in since we last recorded?
I'll go with Lalos because he's kind of been an NFL journeyman in the last 5-6 years. Pretty much just been on practice squads up in the New York Giants, I believe is where he started his career. And this is a guy who then he went to the Saints, but it's kind of weird. I didn't even know this. I put up a piece on Roundtable as well, just to keep plugging our work here. But I didn't know this, but he also doubled in the XFL as well in his time, still kind of bouncing around between the NFL and the XFL. So he's kind of I guess I could see versatility in his career almost, and also at the position. So to kind of go from being a defensive end, which he was for the majority of the first two teams, Giants and Saints, I believe. And then he joined he was in I think it was like spring training. He was in a mini camp for the Eagles, which is where he kind of started to make that switch into long snapper. I don't really fully know the logic here in terms of them bringing him in. I just think maybe the Patriots are just looking for some competition at this position. So it's an interesting move for me to see this with him and Ashby pretty much going to be going toe-to-toe in spring training. But I guess, it's not just QBs that need to be fighting to get on the depth chart. It's long snappers. It's linebackers. It's safeties. It's everyone. It's punters. Who knows? So this is a pretty interesting move by the Patriots, even though it didn't make probably a lot of headlines out there on the internet this week. But I like it. That's why I wrote about it.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel preaches that he wants to bring in competition for every single position on the roster. When you're bringing in a second long snapper, I think that sentiment definitely holds true. He is going to bring in competition at every single position, and perhaps a guy with some versatility, like you mentioned, being a converted position here with him now being a long snapper, maybe looking for a guy that gives you a little bit more in kick coverage rather than just, snapping the football. But we don't need to dive too deep into why the Patriots may have a second long snapper on the roster. They have 90 guys to fill out a roster with right now, so certainly some space to do so at this point. One that I want to touch on here before we move forward in the show, and I think serves as a really nice transition into where we're going with this next, is tight end Julian Hill, who was brought in at somewhat of a large contract for the role that he projects to fill. He signed a 3-year, $18 million deal with the Patriots and will fill in as that Y inline blocking tight end. He is not a pass catcher. He's only caught 33 passes in his career with the Miami Dolphins before coming up to Foxborough. But I think the benefit of bringing in a guy like Hill is that it's going to, at bare minimum, take a lot of pressure off of Hunter Henry, who played an extraordinarily high percentage of run blocking snaps last season. Actually, when you compare his 380-ish run blocking snaps last year to his previous years with the Patriots, it was about 100 snaps higher than his typical average. I think that we saw, especially later in the season, started to slow down his impact that he had in the passing game. And now he can kind of fill into more of that F role where they can move him around a little bit off the line of scrimmage, maybe even in the slot a little bit more to open up some things for him over the middle of the field, get him into space where he can be a reliable zone sitting target for Drake Maye like he has been, and like the Patriots just lost this offseason when they got rid of Stephon Diggs. So Julian Hill may not do a lot in the passing game for the Patriots, but what he does as a blocker, they're certainly placing a premium value on based on the contract that they ended up handing out to him, and continues a trend here for the Patriots. I'm continuing to add to that offensive arsenal around Drake Maye. We wanted them, and as we entered the offseason, to attack the offensive line, and they definitely did so with Elijah Vera Tucker. We wanted them to bring in an extra tight end behind Hunter Henry, and they could still certainly add to that room. We're going to talk about that here when we get into the mock draft. There's certainly still more openings there in that tight end room for the Patriots, and a very strong draft class to do so, but you at least fill that immediate need for a blocking tight end through free agency. And we wanted them to go after a wide receiver, Tyler, and they did that when they signed Romeo Doubs. And that may not be the end of the additions in the wide receiver room as we look at where the Patriots stand in the cap space that they still have available as we move ahead closer and closer to the NFL draft. It seems like on a day-to-day basis now, Tyler, all roads continue to lead back to A.J. Brown. And there is a news cycle that is around the clock for this guy right now. We've continued to get news on a daily basis for A.J. Brown and his future in Philadelphia. Most recently, this past weekend, it was framed as though the Philadelphia Eagles were in a Brown or Dallas Goedert situation, with Dallas Goedert being due for a contract extension. Had he not signed prior to Monday's deadline for the team, he would have accounted for a $20 million dead cap hit against the Philadelphia Eagles salary cap for the 2026 season. They end up getting him signed, and $3 million less than his value on his last contract before he walked out last year and scored 11 touchdowns for the team. So a good bit of business there by Howie Roseman to get that deal done and for cheaper money on Dallas Goedert and push that dead cap hit off at least until 2027 now for the team. That's not where things ended with the A.J. Brown saga, though, over the weekend. It felt like the Los Angeles Rams may be the team that were interested in trading for Brown. They've since pulled their hat out of the race here. It also felt like the Denver Broncos may be entering this a little bit later on. Late last night, we got reports of Denver perhaps being interested in A.J. Brown. Earlier today, the breaking news in the NFL was that the Denver Broncos went out and traded for the Miami Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle. They give up their first-round pick, pick 30, the pick right before the Patriots at pick 31, their third and fourth round pick to get Waddle, and a fourth round pick, the 11th pick of the fourth round, in return from Miami for Waddle. Lots of moving pieces, parts. Continued into the afternoon today, where the Eagles signed Hollywood Brown, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs, to round out that wide receiver room there in Philly. But through all of this, Tyler, the Eagles have maintained that they would prefer to wait until after June 1st to trade A.J. Brown. Where do you stand right now on Brown's odds to be on the Patriots in 2026, or just, I guess, generally out of Philadelphia? Where are you at with this A.J. Brown, the continued saga surrounding him?
It's funny you bring up the Rams, who were in this thing for like 24 to 36 hours, because when I heard about the Rams, I was kind of like, that feels like a good deal. Maybe a tight window with an aging Matthew Stafford. I think he's only got one more year left on his current deal there, but he's in a wide receiver room with, I mean, for the moment, Devontae Adams. I know the Rams are supposedly shopping him around at this point, but Puka Nacua as well. I mean, that's a team that maybe if some things played out differently for them in the NFC Championship game, could have been the Super Bowl and probably maybe even could have been Super Bowl champions. I'm not saying I'm picking them. I'm not going into the past here or anything. Who knows? But what I am getting at is I thought the Rams, that was going to be stiff competition. Next thing I know, poof, they're out of the picture, it seems. The Jalen Waddle trade does make things very interesting in terms of what the Eagles are going to potentially probably want out of anybody who wants A.J. Brown. And it really feels like as of a few hours ago before you and I hopped on this show, it's back to just really being the Patriots again, So I think, again, the Eagles just kind of are going to want to sit back and wait. And I think they have every right to, as frustrating as that is for, guys like us and Patriots fans too, because most of us, I would say a good 75 to 90% of people who follow the Patriots want to see A.J. Brown in a jersey. It just kind of feels like destiny. But the Waddle trade does mix things up with these high-end, top-of-the-line wide receivers in terms of what teams are going to want if they're going to move off their big-time wideout. Broncos had the 30th pick, and they sent it away. And Patriots have the 31st pick, and they sent it away. And we'll touch on all that in a few minutes. But it's almost like the Broncos kind of the team that lost the AFC Championship looking at the Patriots going, look what we did. Look, you going to do it too? You going to do it too? You going to go get your guy? You going to compete like this? And so now I would say the ball is in the Eagles' court in terms of them just sitting back and waiting to see what the deal is. But the ball is also in the Patriots' court to go get competitive with the other, one of the other 3 or 4 or 5 dominant teams in the conference. So I think, to sum it all up and I guess answer your question out of all that, I still think A.J. Brown is going to be a New England Patriot. I did write about them drafting a rookie wide receiver very high in Denzel Boston out of Washington. I could still kind of see that in the sense of the Patriots utilizing a top round, maybe not a first round. I know I said first round in the article, but I could see them hunting someone down high up in the sense of so that they can get a long-term developmental partner with Drake Maye and a wide receiver so he doesn't really have these free agents and these trade deals coming and going and whatnot, because I think he's going to need some stability or else that might mess him up a little bit in 3 or 4 years. But in the end, I still like A.J. Brown in a Patriots uniform if it's by June 1st, fine. But I almost even wonder if a handshake deal is done. Just nothing is in ink and paper yet between these two teams.
Tyler, I'm here to tell you that we've been lied to. Over and over and over again, we've been lied to. Prior to this past weekend, it seemed as though we were in a Goddard or Brown situation for the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia couldn't afford to have both of their dead cap hits on their salary cap this season, and re-signing Dallas Goedert would seemingly open the door for an A.J. Brown trade pre-June 1st. But in the days since Dallas Goedert's signing, the rhetoric has remained entirely the same. The Eagles would prefer to wait on trading A.J. Brown. That's what we've heard this entire time. He has a dead cap hit of $43 million pre-June 1st. That goes all the way down to about $16 million post-June 1st. That makes a lot of sense that they would want to wait on moving him because of that. That's what we're hearing from all of these national pundits. But from these same national pundits, we've also heard about this slew of teams with reported interest in A.J. Brown. The Buffalo Bills were in it. They traded for DJ Moore. They're out. The Chargers were in it. They're out. The Rams were in it. They're out. Most recently, the Broncos were in it, and they just went out and traded for Jalen Waddle. They're out. All that remains now is the New England Patriots. So let's look at this instead of from the angle that Brown has generated interest from all of these different teams and the Eagles are trying to start a bidding war here for his services. Let's look at this from a little bit of a different lens. The national media's reporting can be viewed as a reflection of Howie Roseman, the Philadelphia Eagles general manager, posturing, trying to use whatever leverage he has left in this situation to win the deal, which he so loves to do. We know that. And after the last month of daily charades, Tyler, A.J. Brown is not going to be a Philadelphia Eagle in 2026. He is not going to walk in that locker room and be a happy camper and suit up for the Eagles for an entire another season. So Roseman is doing whatever he can to ensure that he gets a proper return on an investment that he spent a first and third round pick to acquire 3 years ago. But NFL players in trades are a whole lot like cars. They're depreciating assets. Howie drove AJ off the lot. He put all of this mileage on him for the past 4 years, and now he's trying to go back and get a higher price than what he paid for him. That's not how business is done in the NFL. New England has been the only constant in these trade discussions, and their continued interest in Brown continues to feel like the worst kept secret in the NFL this offseason. Now the Patriots don't even reek of the desperation they once had following the signing of Romeo Doubs for their wide receiver core. So now we're at a point where if the Patriots are only negotiating against themselves, Roseman can kiss his ROI goodbye. And any day now, A.J. Brown can take the disgruntlement that he's had behind closed doors in Philadelphia and go public with that and demand a trade. Really put some pressure on the organization. And if that happens, Philadelphia is not getting as high a pick as we're even going to talk about them getting here tonight for him. So as more time goes along, the Philadelphia Eagles only continue to lose leverage. Waiting on trading Brown until after the draft would only subtract from a roster that's in win now mode for 2026. Their return would be a 2027 draft pick at that point, and that would not be a player that's on the field for them this upcoming season. So Philadelphia may want to wait on this for salary cap reasons, but that's about the only benefit that they have in doing so. After this Goddard deal, after the Waddle trade, I'm only more reaffirmed in those beliefs. And at this point, Tyler, it feels more like a matter of when, not if, A.J. Brown becomes a New England Patriot. Contrary to all of the national speculation, I would be extremely surprised if that doesn't happen before the NFL draft.
I want to give you a round of applause here, but I won't. It'll spike the audio here or anything. If you want to know more about Eddie's little rant here, just be sure to read his article that he posted, I think, yesterday on the site. Very well put together. I'll touch on one thing here, and it's just the obvious and simple fact that A.J. Brown is not happy as a Philadelphia Eagle. Eagles fans know that, and I'm not saying I know every single Philadelphia Eagles fan on the planet, but I've talked to a few that are in my orbit, and they want him gone too. And it's, they look at it as him being a diva and whatnot. And I truthfully think, of course, he's a wide receiver. Of course, he's probably a little bit of a diva. But if he has a good kinship with a current coach that wants to bring him in, what are we waiting for here? I said it last week. If the Eagles keep A.J. Brown next year I'm not even going to say by November, by like early October, I'm worried he's going to, get in a fist fight with Nick Sirianni. All right. And I know Philly fans might eat that up and whatnot. And that's okay. That's them, not us, but he's not happy there. And I think this is a little bit of a game from the Eagles side of things where they probably feel like they're being smart at trying to appreciate his value in terms of, like you mentioned, with a car and whatnot, with that cap hit going down by June 1st. But I just kind of feel like the Patriots Mike Vrabel and Elliott Wolf are just kind of subtly putting pressure on the Eagles, and they don't even really know it yet, just by simply being quiet and being steady and being this one constant team in the press in terms of A.J. Brown trade conversations. Rams have come and gone. Broncos came and went. Bills were on the radar for like a little bit, like about a month ago. It's clear as day that it's like I don't even want to compare it to anything. It might get a little inappropriate here, so I'm not even going to. But the fact that the Patriots are just this constant thing, it almost feels threatening to the Eagles front office that they're just not going to go anywhere. It's like, okay, you're going to keep this guy next season, and he's going to potentially be unhappy. I can take him off of your roster and probably smooth things over a bit. In terms of, I don't want to say a rebuild for Philly. They still are a good team. I still think they're the best team in the NFC East at this moment. They'll probably still take the division next year. Well, I mean, it's up for debate. We'll see how the Giants play with Harbaugh there now. But I just think the Patriots are doing them a favor, and the Eagles are going to shoot themselves in the foot here in the next few weeks if they really let this thing drag out to June 1st.
Yeah, and look, the $40 million cap hit, that's nothing to bat an eye at, but we've already seen teams this offseason take on dead cap hits, much larger than A.J. Brown's. Look at the Miami Dolphins, who just traded Jalen Waddle today. Jalen Waddle's going to be over $26 million in dead cap for them this year. In totality now, the Miami Dolphins are taking on just about $175 million in dead cap for players that are not going to be on their roster that they cut this offseason. So it's not like this is entirely unheard of. We could go back to Russell Wilson when the Denver Broncos moved on from him and that dead cap hit there. Daniel Jones, when the New York Giants moved on from him, that was an absurd dead cap hit.
Yeah.
And the big sticking point here was Dallas Goedert. If you were going to move on from one of these guys, it was probably going to be one or the other. And that's why we were taking a close look at what happened with that Dallas Goedert situation. Because if you had the $43 million with Brown and the $20 million with Goedert, that would be a lot more difficult to stomach. But again, this is going to go back to the Patriots can wait this out. If they're the only team in this discussion at this point, the price is only going to go down for them as they continue to wait, because Brown is going to make this an untenable situation at some point for Philadelphia, and credit to him for not doing that at this point. But everybody knows where he wants to go. Everybody knows what team wants him. And it feels like, again, a matter of when, not if, that ends up getting done. So if you're Philadelphia, why push this off until June 1st for $20 million extra on your cap this season, when you can get a player that is going to help you in this win now window that they're in, continue to make a playoff push in the NFC East and the NFC as a whole this season? Why are you going to push that off to 2027? So with all of that being said, that's going to kind of tee things up for us here, Tyler, for our mock draft 2.0. So we're going to pull up the simulator here, and we're going through all 7 rounds, folks, with the New England Patriots, and things are going to look a lot different here this time. Our mock draft is going to include trades, and we are going to kick things off with an A.J. Brown trade to the New England Patriots. We're going to enter the draft here, all 7 rounds. And before we get started, again, we think that this thing is going to happen before the draft so that Philadelphia can get some return for the 2026 season. So we're going to tee things up here with A.J. Brown. And especially after the Waddle trade today, we're going to have to include pick 31. I had this whole thing plotted out where we were going to try and give him a second rounder because his value was going to go down as time goes along. We are going to do a second round pick and a player, which I will not name here. Should I name him here? I can really get the comments section ablaze if I do that.
Go ahead. This will drive a lot of.
We were going to go second round pick in Kayshon Boutte, who's on an expiring contract. I know the hearts and minds of New England Patriots fans everywhere are just shuddering to think of Boutte being on a different team and going to Philadelphia here. But I think, depending on how you look at this could end up being a positive thing for the Patriots if they just give up pick 31 and something later in the draft, and they're able to keep both A.J. Brown and Kayshon Boutte on the roster. So let's plug in A.J. Brown. We're going to plug in pick 31 and 131 using that Waddle deal as a framework for a first and fourth round pick for Philadelphia. And you see right here, before we even press trade, this trade will likely be accepted. So we're going to offer that trade here, Tyler, to acquire A.J. Brown with the Patriots' 31st overall pick. We good with that?
I mean, yeah, let's go get him.
All right. So with pick 31, the Patriots are grabbing A.J. Brown, and that is going to launch us right into New England Patriots mock draft 2.0 for the 2026 NFL draft. Let's get things rolling here. And Tyler, as we kind of sit here and wait for the Patriots to come up on the board, we have to wait all the way until pick 63 now for New England to come back on the clock with A.J. Brown technically being their first round pick. And as we get up on the board at pick 63 here, what are we looking at for the Patriots to target now that this is their first pick of the NFL draft?
I am leaning into the category of edge, defensive end, whatever we want to call it anymore these days. My standout guy here, and we've talked about it, I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about him last time, was Derek Moore over in Michigan. Right there on the top. Look, he's got great downhill speed. Seventh production score, 7th of the combine. I just loved what I saw out of him. Athleticism, 18th, which, I know that kind of, I'm looking at the chart here over on NFL, over on NFL.com on the app here. I know I'm looking at, for anybody watching along, I'm looking off camera here a little bit. I know we got the chart up here and everything, but 18th in terms of athleticism score. But he's a great downhill runner. Could be good against the run. I think the Patriots, no one's really talking about Max Crosby right now. He seems like he's a Raider for the time being. And I haven't heard any chatter in the zeitgeist about really the Patriots in that conversation really anymore. I know a week ago that might've been different, but I firmly believe the Pats are going to be looking at edge right now in this second round. So I like him. I am a sucker. I know you're an Ohio guy. Sorry. I'm not from Michigan, but I kind of I watched a lot of Michigan football because I watched Brady when he was in college. So when he showed up on the Pats, I was like, oh, I know that guy. It was before he ever became Tom Brady, really. But I kind of watched a lot of Michigan football, so I do kind of catch the eyes of Michigan players, I feel, a lot in the draft. So I have been keeping tabs on Derek Moore. So sorry, I know you're an Ohio guy.
No, love the Derek Moore pick here. And I think that's probably what I'll go with. I agree with a lot of what you said. I'll kind of touch on him before we draft him in a minute, because I will definitely go in line with you on this one. One other guy that I do want to bring up here, though, before we pass him up, is Romello Height. Definitely won't be on the board when we're up again in the third round for the Patriots here, but a little bit more undersized for him. Unlike his name may suggest, he is not the biggest of guys on the market here in the edge draft pool. Weighed in at 239 pounds at the NFL draft. I think he actually projects very similarly to Harold Landry. You see this guy has a almost 22% pass rush win rate, and he's an athletic freak. Ran a 4.64 40-yard dash, had a 1.63 second 10-yard split, 39-inch vertical jump, 10-foot 5-inch broad jump. He can move all over the field. And one thing that I think a guy like Mike Vrabel would love about Romello Height is that he's an effort and finish type of player. He is all gas, no brakes. Every single play he's on the field, he is going all out to try and get to the quarterback. Just maybe at this point in the draft, a little bit too much situation dependent for the Patriots here. They did lose a pass rusher in Caleb Chason. They bring in Draymond Jones. That gives you some pass rush ability, a little bit more size. He plays somewhere between 265 and his listed weight is at 280 pounds for Draymond Jones. So much better edge setter for the run game on defense. So I think that you could afford to take more of a pass rush specialist here with a guy like Romello Height. So definitely want to talk about him as a potential option here. But I also love this pick here of Derek Moore. I think that I'm going to stick right in line with you here on our second round selection here. You're not getting too much of a drop off here in terms of his pass rush win rate, just about 20% here for Derek Moore, but a much better run defender. Much better size here for a guy like Derek Moore, 6'3", 260. Again, very similar to what we're looking at with Draymond Jones. Could fill in on either edge there, depending on how that rotation goes with guys like Jones and Landry, and gives you a little bit more long-term upside at that position. So, Tyler, love the pick here. Let's go with Derek Moore in the second round. Now, before we get all the way here to pick number 95, which is going to be our next pick, I kind of want to take a look at the board a little bit here, Tyler, because yes, we could wait until all the way at 95. That is at the very bottom of the top 100 selections. And you always hear from teams that there is a major difference between being able to draft players in the top 100 and then the rest of the draft thereafter that. And now that we've traded our first round pick away, and we still have those 4 sixth round selections later on in the draft, I think that the weight in this draft for the Patriots after acquiring a guy like A.J. Brown is shifted way too far in the back end. So I think that this may be a spot here where even if they're just moving up about 10-ish picks in the third round to move up and identify a player that is going to be an immediate difference maker for them, I think that's something that you have to look at doing here if you're New England, looking at pick number 95. So I was running through this exercise a little bit earlier, and of all of these teams, 10 to 15 picks ahead of them, I think the Los Angeles Chargers are actually a really good fit for a trade partner. You see them here at 86, the only 2 picks that they have later in the draft after this are pick 123 and 203, as opposed to the Patriots here with now 9 picks still remaining in the draft. So a slide up here a little bit for the Patriots and an opportunity to balance the board here a little bit. How are we feeling about maybe moving up a little bit in the third round to go out and find one of these guys that we want to snag before they're gone in the top 100?
I mean, I think this is an area or a round, I should say, where even if we're not picking someone who's on the field nonstop in 2026, get somebody really good developed, or get somebody to develop this season at a pretty good skilled position. So I think any little nudge up that we can get, I'd say go for it. And to do it against a team that we beat in the playoffs, why the hell not?
Yeah. So the way that I'm looking at this here is, how are we going to give up a couple of these picks to move up the board? And right now it looks like this trade gets done with the Patriots' third round pick and 2 of their 6th round picks. So you would still be left with 2 6th round picks, and you would have that earlier selection in the third round here. So I really like this one. I'm going to offer this trade 84% chance to be accepted here by the Chargers to slide up about 10 picks in the round. And that does get it done here. So let's resume the draft and see where we're at. And oh boy, the guy that I would have liked to take here at 86, we pulled the trigger a little bit earlier, was Sam Roush. The
that's who I have up right now.
Stanford. So really like this guy in this range, but I think as the draft season has rolled along, we've continued to see an upward trend for Sam Roush, and you can see that here on PFF, the jump that this guy has made in his projected draft ranking here over the last few months, especially after the scouting combine here. Would have really loved to attack the tight end position here with the Patriots' third round pick, especially moving up the draft. A couple of other positions that I would be looking at here, Tyler, are linebacker, which I think that we could still target a little bit later on in this draft, or I would look at corner here because I think that there's a little bit of a drop off after that. This is a sneaky position, I feel like, with the Patriots, where they have their 3 solidified starters in the lineup with Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis on the boundary, and then Marcus Jones in the slot. But after that, a whole lot of nothing. Their fourth string corner going into last year was Alex Austin. He's currently sitting out on the free agent market, not tenured by the Patriots to return potentially for 2026. They picked up Charles Woods. I don't think that that's a long-term answer for them there. Otherwise, you're still looking at guys like Marcellus Dial and company that were on the roster for the preseason. Something happened injury-wise. They shelved him for IR for the entire season. But again, not a whole lot of depth for the Patriots at corner there. So I really like either off-ball linebacker here or corner based on where we're at in the draft. I think especially at corner, there's a bit of a drop-off if you're looking for a boundary guy, which could be a need for the Patriots after 2026. Who knows what the future of Carlton Davis is in New England after 2026. And that Christian Gonzalez contract is definitely still looming, maybe something that they want to future-proof themselves on. One other position here, and I'll kind of let you jump in on this, would be offensive tackle, another one of these positions where there is a clear drop-off. Right now have Markel Bell sitting there at 6'9", 350 pounds, an absolute behemoth at tackle. And again, another one of these positions where there is a clear drop-off after we get past this point. Tyler, where are we feeling here with now pick 86 in the third round?
I love what you're saying about cornerback because I feel like they got to find a way to finagle someone into that position in the draft. I'm looking at Devin Moore out of Florida right now. 6'3", 198, production score at 80, which is third at the combine, I believe. Fast kid, 40-yard dash. Well, fat. Yeah, I would say. I mean, anybody who can run a 40-yard dash faster than me is fast. So 4.5 seconds. The only thing that has me worried, and that could mean for maybe he's not necessarily on the field too much in 2026, is, he's got a good size on him, but he's been limited due to injuries in college, I believe. So I don't know if that's going to play into things long term. But again, like what you said, I think this is a good spot for a cornerback or a linebacker, but I trust a kid coming out of Florida, not trying to be biased or anything, but I trust it. I've always admired the program up in Gainesville. So I like the pick at that one. That one's going to be for me, I guess.
Yeah, I really like this one too. I will go right in line with you here on this one. I like Devin Moore as a corner that gives you both man-to-man coverage and zone coverage capabilities. As we get later into the draft here, this is going to be a position where a lot of these guys are going to be more zone-heavy specialists, which may not be the worst thing in the world for a Patriot system now that's running a much higher percentage of zone coverages than they typically would have in the past under a Bill Belichick regime, but definitely still places a premium value on some of these corners that can do a little bit of both. I like Moore here as a taller, bigger corner, like you mentioned, 6'3", 198, big body to put out on the boundary, and that's where he lined up more often than not when he was at Florida, not looking at another one of these interior slot corners. That's going to be a position group that I think, even though is pretty much just Marcus Jones technically at the corner position right now for the Patriots, has a little bit more company around him with guys like Kevin Byard and Craig Woodson that will both be able to step down into the box and play off of that slot. So I think that although it's not a corner for the Patriots in that slot role, quite often, aside from Marcus Jones, they definitely still have options there, and it's a little bit thinner there for them on the boundary. So I really like Devin Moore. We're going to go with him. A couple of guys that I do want to touch on here before we make that selection would be right around the range here for this guy like Markel Bell, right? Markel Bell, 6'9", 350 pounds, one of the top tackle prospects on the board that you don't have concerns about with him, just flat out moving to guard or moving to center. Another one of these guys that I really liked was Brian Parker out of Duke, but when he worked out at the scouting combine, worked out exclusively as an interior offensive lineman, as a center. So again, another one of these players where, he's not going to be asked to be on the field for you in 2026, but we're trying to find a player that can fill in at that right tackle spot long-term, when Morgan Moses walks out the door and eventually retires or moves on for the Patriots. We're not going to be drafting a guy here that you're immediately going to have to kick inside. So for that reason, I will continue to stay along this defensive end here and go with a guy like Devin Moore. Also, a lot of people that really like Dalen Everett in this spot here. Just the man coverage grade right here for me at 52.2 is something that I can't really get past with drafting a player for this Patriots scheme within the top 100 picks. I think that that's a big deterrent for him. He's been very up and down on film. Sometimes he looks fantastic, looks great in all of the on-field drills at events like the scouting combine, but hasn't always translated over onto the tape. I like a lot more of what we've seen from Devin Moore. And again, another one of these guys, Tyler, that you may not need for that many snaps on the field in 2026, but especially as the season wears along, depending on what happens with injuries, you're only really 3 deep at that corner room. Add another body there and bolster the depth with some high-end talent that could eventually develop into a starting caliber player for you. So love Devin Moore here. Let's go with him at pick 86. And now we have quite the wait until pick 125 here for the Patriots. And at pick 125, we're going to take a look at who we have on the board. My favorite place to go here recently, Tyler, has been this off-ball linebacker position. And the guy right at the top of the board has been a middle round favorite for me when I'm running through these mock drafts in Bryce Betcher out of Oregon. He is a downhill thumper at the off-ball linebacker position. Feels like he constantly lives in the backfield, shooting run gaps. Fantastic run player where his coverage grade may be reflective of a player that's better in coverage. I think he's actually better in run defense. He has some growing to do in zone coverage on the back end, but certainly didn't see that reflected in his PFF grades here. So it looks like he gives you a little bit of everything here at the linebacker position. I think this, again, could also be another one of these spots where you could look at tackle. We do have Brian Parker here, but again, he's going to be a guy that already is transitioning to be an interior offensive lineman. How about Jude Bowery here as an alternative option at the tackle position, a BC kid, so continuing that Boston College pipeline here for the Patriots. Going to look like he's projecting to stay at tackle, just not a guy that you want to be playing from day one of his NFL career. That wouldn't necessarily be needed in a spot like New England, where you do have Morgan Moses. You can have him sit on the bench and learn for a year, kind of round out the intricacies of his game, which is definitely needed at this point. He has great strength. He has great positioning, but when pass rushers are consistent against him and have a counter move and continue to push forward on him, it seems like he loses those battles more often than not. He needs to get a little bit stronger with his lower body to anchor in the ground and really stand up to these second and third moves from these pass rushers. So something that the Patriots could work with him on and keep him right in Boston. If they decide to go with a tackle here, he would be my guy, but I still lean more towards linebacker. Tyler, what are you thinking here?
So I might pick a different player than you, but I do agree with you on the linebacker, just kind of adding to that core right now. If you want to pull it up for me, I don't know if I want to make sure I actually saw it. Yes, Trey Moore out of Texas. Love what I'm seeing out of this kid. Production score. He was 15th in the combine, but he's an athletic kid, in my opinion. 4.54 seconds on the 40-yard dash, 1.6 seconds, 10-yard split. 38.5 vertical jump. I think, and another thing is he's very versatile, which I think is going to come into handy with him. And I mean, how many times have the Patriots just wanted versatility in their players? He's a 46 game starter at Texas, undersized, but I think he could be what we've seen kind of in, linebackers moving in and out of the Patriots in the last 24 hours. They bring a guy like this kid in, and here we are repeating the same thing like we do every episode. Maybe this isn't a 2026 starter. Maybe he sees a little action, but I think he could have a good year learning in this group that they're about to have. seeing how things obviously play out. So I'm going to go with Trey Moore.
I like Trey Moore a lot. I think that we could probably target him a little bit later on, at least with where he ranks in this PFF simulator. He's at 182 here. We still have pick 169 if we wanted to hold off on linebacker, but I feel like at this point, you kind of have to grab somebody at that position if you want to go on the defensive side of the football. One position we haven't talked about here yet, though, Tyler, is tight end. And tight end, this may feel like a little bit of a sweet spot here for the Patriots. You have a bunch of options on the table here in the tight end room. Last time we went with Nate Borkashire. I still really like him at this spot. It may be a little bit early in terms of BPA for him, where he ranks, I believe, 158th here on the board. But a guy that gives you a nice blend of pass blocking, run blocking, and receiving ability. Feels like he would, with a well-rounded out skill set, fit very well into this tight end room in New England. A guy like Justin Joly may be a little bit more of that F-style tight end like Hunter Henry, which, again, may not be the worst thing in the world with him also being on an expiring contract and in his mid-30s now this year. So a Joly may be an option here. A couple other guys that are going to be in this range a little bit later on that I may want to wait on this one a little bit to pick 169 just to see how the board falls to us. I like a guy like Eli Raridan. I like a guy like John Michael Gillenborg. So I excuse me, I feel like there are going to be options here for the Patriots a little bit later on in the draft to target a tight end. But, you know, this would have been a great spot had they still had those 2 4th-round picks without the A.J. Brown trade to maybe grab a linebacker and grab a tight end here. Right now, we're kind of sitting with 1 4th-round pick, picking between the two positions. Do you lean one way or the other for the Patriots here?
I mean, now that we're talking about it, regardless, we do need to kind of get some sort of help to or potential void to fill in 6 to 12 months time for Hunter Henry. I don't think he's going to be a Patriot in 2027, whether he retires or goes elsewhere. We talked about Borkashire last week, and I think I still kind of, you know, I'm still leaning more towards him. I mean, I haven't really looked at a lot of the other guys yet, but in terms, you know, he's a big guy. I liked anybody coming out of Texas A&M, but I do think a tight end is probably around this start of the draft where we should probably be showing some interest towards.
Yeah, I think this is the spot here where you start looking at tight end, you start looking at linebacker, maybe even earlier on with the 3rd-round pick, we could have gone with a linebacker as more of an immediate contributor for the Pats there. You may start looking at positions like safety here as well. So we'll talk about them a little bit later on. I think, again, just like the tight end class here, the safety class is a little bit deeper if we look at that. You still have a guy like Michael Taft on the board out of Texas. I like Bishop Fitzgerald. We're going to talk about, hopefully, Lorenzo Styles a little bit later on, because that's going to be a guy that we can potentially snag in the 6th round if the board kind of falls right here for us. So I think that there are going to be some options a little bit later on for the Pats there to grab a safety. Same goes with the tight end, and I think that that's less of an immediate position of need with still having Hunter Henry on the roster and spending $18 million to bring in a guy like Julian Hill. That is quite the investment there from the Patriots on a blocking tight end. So certainly a guy that they expect to see take a high percentage of snaps in the offense, much like Austin Hooper did last year. Yeah. So I think just because of the talent drop off here, Tyler, I'd like to go with linebacker. And I'd love to go with Bryce Betcher. I gave you the first couple here with Derek Moore and Devin. We draft 2 Moores. Am I just realizing that? We have added 2 more to the Patriots with Derek Moore and Devin Moore. All part of the plan. Yeah, we're just who else is more in this? Trey Moore. You wanted to draft Trey Moore. Can we go more, and more with all 3 of these first picks? No, but we're going to go with Bryce Betcher here as a run-stuffing downhill off-ball linebacker that will project to play more as a little bit more in space next to a guy like Robert Spillane, a fill-in rotational linebacker that can give you, again, some special teams depth here early on in his career. But hopefully, as some of these other players age out, Christian Ellis's future, who knows what Robert Spillane looks like in a couple of years, he could fill in as a plus starter long-term. So we're going to go with Bryce Betcher here out of Oregon in the 4th round. And kind of wait for the board to come back around to us here again. A big drop off between pick 125 and pick 169. So we're going to see here, Tyler, just how this tight end board looks here before we do anything. And right at the top of the board here, we do see a guy like Borkasher already off the board, but right at the top here, Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame, another one of these good mix of blocking tight end, pass catching tight end. I thought with the size that he brings to the table, he profiles to be a really great blocking tight end at just over 6'6", 250 pounds. He looked a little bit smaller than that at the NFL Combine when he was running routes there, but a very fluid athlete, a guy that could be more of a pass-catching tight end and long-term fill the role of Hunter Henry in this offense with a guy like Julian Hill playing next to him as more of that Y blocking tight end. Again, I mentioned John Michael Gillenborg. I think that we could potentially wait again to see him come around in the 6th round if we prefer him. But I think this is probably the spot, seeing Raridan still on the board here at pick 169, where we go with the tight end. What do you think?
I'm going to have to agree with you in terms of Raridan. Yeah, if we got tight ends in this area, let's go for it. But since we're doing this episode and we should kind of contribute some other names out there, the kid out of Alabama, Josh I can't pronounce his last name. Cuevas. Well, Cuevas. But tight end ranked at the combine 5th, fat 4.65 seconds, 20-yard shuffle 4.38, 3 cone drill 7.37. Just by his look, looks like a big guy. Could double as some blocking. Anybody out of Alabama, I know Nick Saban's long gone now, but I still think the program produces just big, gritty guys. I think it's another good addition to the room, but again, a guy at Notre Dame for me as a tight end is a very lucrative look for me for the Patriots. So I'm just throwing another name out there, but I'm on board with you if you want to snatch this kid up at Notre Dame, Raridan.
Yeah, so Raridan listed at 6'7" here. He was actually measured as 6'6" at the NFL Combine, 245 pounds, so a little bit slimmer than what we have here on PFF. 4.62, 40-yard dash for him, 1.6 second 10-yard split. So he's a guy, another one of these extremely fast tight ends comparatively to what we've seen in previous years. All of these position groups at the NFL Combine seemingly setting records for speed and athleticism this year. But we were told that this was a bad draft, Tyler. I mean, we're getting a tight end in the 5th round that runs a 4.6 second 40-yard dash and gives you some great plus side as a pass catcher at the tight end position. So love this Eli Raridan pick. Let's go with him here for the Patriots in the 5th round and fill that tight end need long-term. Not one of these guys that needs to play right away and contribute a bunch in 2026, but could project forward as a nice, dependable option in that room later on. So now we're back up at pick 197 here for the Patriots. We did some movement around the board with those 6th round picks when we moved up in the 3rd round to go and get Devin Moore. But now that we sit here at pick 197, we have pick 211 and pick 247 still awaiting us in the future. This is where I think that at this point, we haven't taken a safety, Tyler. We have to go and attack value here for the Patriots late in the draft. And again, a guy like Lorenzo Styles here still sitting on the board, the Ohio State connection. We saw a lot of his family at the NFL Combine, obviously with his brother Sonny Styles being a potential top 5 draft pick in the NFL draft this year, kind of resetting what we think about for positional draft value for the off-ball linebacker position. But Lorenzo Styles ran a 4.27 second 40-yard dash. He's an extremely fast, fluid athlete that gives you the ability to play as a deep safety, but also, once again, like we've seen with the Patriots and what they're looking for out of these safeties that they're bringing in, gives you the positional versatility to be able to line up in the box and in the slot as well. So does a lot of what these guys like Craig Woodson and Kevin Byard are going to do, gives you an extra body in the room behind them. And Byard coming in at his age 33 season here is certainly one of these more short-term pickups for the Patriots that isn't going to have a long-term projection with the team. You need to add somebody into the room behind him. I really like how Styles could fit in and learn from a guy like Byard while he kind of develops as a player in the NFL. How are we feeling about a guy like Lorenzo Styles or just the safety position as a whole here for the Patriots?
We can go with him. I'll let you have another one here or anything, but I do want to touch on a name we touched on last week in terms of Bishop Fitzgerald out of USC that I see up there. Again, at the safety position, he's just safety, right? I'm not misreading this or anything.
Yeah, yes. And a deep safety at that. So if we're looking for somebody a little bit different, he could be, where Byard and Woodson come down and play into the box a little bit more, play off the slot a little bit more. Fitzgerald could be one of those ball hawking guys over the top, playing that deep third of the field behind them.
I mean, he capitalizes on good takeaway opportunities. He's got judging on some notes I have here, he's just got very clear-eyed on the field, can see the whole thing as it unfolds. Interception production literally follows him at every stop, it seems. I feel like you're going to go with your Ohio guy, but I do like I do like this kid. I know we touched on him last week. I can't remember if he was a round up or a round down, but I feel like he was in this region of the draft that we were talking about him. So I like a good, Virginia kid, based or from Virginia, I believe, but a good West Coast college kid. I don't know.
Yeah, really like Bishop Fitzgerald as well at this spot in the draft. I think it just kind of depends on what you're looking for in that safety position. And I will give, like I said a little bit earlier, a lot of kudos to him here as a position, a free safety position player that can play deep, that middle third of the field, play over the top in coverage as a support for guys like Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis on the outside. That's where he played more so in his days at USC, whereas a player like Lorenzo Styles kind of fits the bill of what the Patriots already have in the room with guys like Byard and Craig Woodson now. But I don't feel like this is a player that they're going to want on the field a ton when you look at with the Patriots and what they did with that safety position last year with guys like Jalen Hawkins taking over 85% of the snaps, Craig Woodson playing almost every single defensive snap for this team last year as a rookie that was taken in the 4th round of the draft. Those guys are going to command a high percentage of snaps. Obviously, Hawkins out the door now, Kevin Byard in, but that is enough of an upgrade at that safety position where I don't feel like they're going to be rolling out there with too many of these 3 safety looks on the field all that often, having such dependability with guys like Byard and Woodson on the back end. So Lorenzo Styles gives you the intangibles and he gives you the athletic traits that you just can't teach with guys like this, with the speed that he gives. So maybe he may not be the most polished player playing in the deep third of coverage, but he certainly has the speed to have range on the back end there. You give him a year or two working in your system underneath some of these other guys like Byard and Woodson, and I think that he could potentially long-term project into a starting caliber role and definitely a player that could contribute on special teams early on here for the Patriots. So I love the Ohio connection. I think that's a big thing with Vrabel going into this draft. I'd like to go with Styles here if you're cool with that.
It's a valid point. Vrabel loves Ohio guys, so I completely get it.
Yeah, we mentioned that on Mock Draft 1.0 that we may start to have some sort of Ohio State to the Patriots pipeline that was pretty much non-existent before Mike Vrabel took over. That started last year in the second round of the draft with Travion Henderson, and I think it continues along at some point in the draft. Here we're sitting towards the tail end of the 6th round, and the Patriots are grabbing an Ohio State player in safety, Lorenzo Styles.
Or a John Carroll guy.
Yeah, or a John Carroll guy. I think he actually probably already went here, Tyler. Tyron Montgomery, we talked about last. Yeah. Oh, look at that. He went right after we picked at 197 before we picked at 211. Ty Montgomery here out of John Carroll would have been a nice developmental option at the receiver position for sure. So, Tyler, who are we looking at here with pick 211? Any positions that we haven't targeted yet that you feel like we just have to go back to here for the Patriots? We've gotten an edge rusher in Derek Moore. We've gotten a corner in Devin Moore. We've gotten a linebacker, an off-ball linebacker in Bryce Betcher, a tight end in Eli Raridan, and a safety in Lorenzo Styles. 2 picks remaining. Anything that we haven't hit that you feel like is a glaring need for the team now at this point?
This is where things just, I don't know, they get kind of, if I throw something out there, I just there's a reason why I'm not a GM. But I look at, I'm looking at just kind of maybe should we look at running backs in the 6th round with them releasing Gibson a couple weeks back, and really, I mean, I know we have a fullback now as well with Gilliam, but we, Stevenson and Henderson, it's really the only standout names I really can think of off the top of my head in the backfield. So I don't know if you're for looking at someone in the rushing game this late in the draft, but I think it's at least worth a glance.
Absolutely. And I have a bit of a surprise here for you, Tyler, because I was going to suggest running back with this pick too. So I'm really glad that we're both in line here on this one. I talked a little bit last week. I talked a little bit last week about Eli Heidenreich, right? And this is a technically fullback out of Navy that actually projects to be a little bit more of a slot receiver in the NFL. He was a downfield receiving threat running that triple option at Navy. He's listed here at 206 pounds. He came in under 200 pounds in the 190s at the NFL Combine. So if he's going to flex out and play a little bit more receiver at 6 foot, sub 200 pounds, I'm not as crazy on him as I once may have been. But one player that you brought up last time we did this that I have a newfound love for now is Adam Randall.
Give compliments to your guy. Sorry.
Yeah, Adam Randall out of Clemson. You mentioned him for our last mock draft, and diving into him a little bit deeper, absolutely love what I'm seeing. He's a converted wide receiver that is 6'2", 235 pounds. So he's not one of these small slot guys that is now all of a sudden trying to play in the backfield. This guy is like the size of Ramondre Stevenson in the backfield with some receiving capabilities. So he could, obviously, again, another one of these players where you're not going to bank on him being a major key contributor in 2026, but round out his game a little bit. And you could have a really interesting mix. Almost think of a guy like Cordero Patterson, right? That they did so much with when he was in New England. He was a receiver, converted to running back when he came and played for Josh McDaniels. That conversion has already happened here for a player like Adam Randall. And he can sit behind guys like Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, and other additions in that room that the Patriots are going to have coming back would be Elijah Mitchell, Terrell Jennings coming back. He played some as the 3rd running back last year for the Patriots, and I mentioned him last time. I'll continue to throw Lan Larison's hat into the ring again here for the Patriots. Really loved what I saw out of him, out of UC Davis as an undrafted rookie free agent last year. But it feels like Adam Randall is starting to get a little bit more love league-wide as being one of these sleeper running back picks that could go between rounds 5 and 7. I love the size that he gives you at this position, especially with Henderson being a bit of a smaller back, could be a backup there to Ramondre Stevenson, who has certainly had his ups and downs in his tenure with the New England Patriots. Tyler, are we still hot on Adam Randall, or are we going kind of in a different direction here with this one?
We are. I know I gave him his praise a couple weeks ago, but what a difference a couple weeks can make. Look, if we want to draft Adam Randall, I'm all for it. But I was reading up on Heidenreich here. It strikes me as like I'm seeing shades of like Danny Woodhead and whatnot. Like 2022, from his time at Navy, he didn't play due to academics not awarding red shirts. But 2023, he leads team with 382 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, tied for the team lead with 19 receptions. 2024 leads team with 39 receptions, 671 receiving yards. 2025, second team All-American, athletic conference. Well, I know he's a running back, but they got him basically working in the receiving core. So to me, that just I just see shades of Danny Woodhead. If we were to go with him, I'm not opposed to that either. So it's just a coin flip for me. I don't know if we talked about this guy in the last time we did this, but it definitely strikes a chord with me as well. I think obviously one or the other, both picks is a win for the team.
Tyler, I like either player. I'll let you take your pick between them.
Oh, you're killing me. Like I said, a difference a couple weeks make. I'm good with going with Heidenreich. Let's go with it. Sorry.
All right,
sorry.
Third running back could give you some stuff in the return game as well at that size. Little wiggle to him, some down the field capabilities there for Heidenreich as a receiver. Something that you're typically not talking about when we're talking about Navy fullbacks. So has some position versatility, can play in the backfield, can be one of those gadget kind of players, and to be able to grab a guy like that here late in the 6th round, I think is incredible value for the position. So yeah, let's do it. Let's go with Heidenreich.
Give some diversity to the background.
211. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very diversifies it with just, I don't know. I feel like with Ramondre Stevenson, you can get shades of that kind of running back player with running back with being a receiver in some aspect, but I feel like it was just kind of scratching the surface. You kind of get a full-on guy like that, could do your offense wonders.
So we reach our final pick here, Tyler, at 247 in the 7th round. We finally made it, and we've kind of attacked each of the major positions of need for the Patriots early and bolstering depth late in the draft here. Let's not forget about A.J. Brown at the top of this list here too. Feeling really good about this draft haul that we're able to still get after executing a trade like that for such a prolific player. I really like, based on how this board went for us too, we waited until round 5 to go grab a tight end, and we took more of a receiving tight end in Eli Raritan. I like double dipping at the tight end position here. Again, you mentioned even earlier, Hunter Henry's future with New England is uncertain here. This could be a player where you're talking practice squad for a year or more of a heavy blocking tight end. I think that there's still value on those kind of players here late in the draft, and a couple that we could go with as, again, developmental prospects for the Patriots. One guy that I keep coming back to as just a fantastic Y tight end, really high run blocking grade off the line of scrimmage, an ability to move the line of scrimmage, even with some of these smaller edge defenders on Big Ten teams, is Will Kasmerick here from Ohio State. He was their backup tight end to Max Clare, who went much, much earlier in this draft. But love the idea of drafting a blocking tight end here if we were going to double dip at that position. Is there another direction that you feel like we should be going in here? Again, late in the 7th round, it's kind of all projection when we get to this point.
Just if you don't mind, pull up DJ Rogers for me at a TCU. I'm just, again, this is some areas I just don't really know. It's just kind of a coin flip for me. I think, getting a guy on the practice squad, maybe just in a 7th round pick, in that position. I mean, I think by the time we got to this round last year with the kid out of John Carroll, I went with a wide receiver. At least that was my pitch for the 7th round. The Patriots kind of pride themselves on getting a weapon, I feel, late in terms of just past players. Julian Edelman is, kind of the go-to comparison of just find somebody who can work their way up the ranks over at least 1 or 2 years' time. I think I just threw out DJ Rogers just because I like TCU, despite getting spanked in the national championship a couple of years ago. But, he's tall, off frame, throws with it. He's got good leg strength, tough kid, had some success stealing the edge and run game and mirroring pass rushers. So I think there's some room for wiggle room there. But again, I don't really know too many guys at this level. But I think just my go-to would be maybe find a weapon for Drake Maye to bring in, kind of like an Efton Chisholm, like bring him in off of when injuries start to pile up and see what he's made of.
Yeah, so Rodgers here, I like this guy a lot. I think he almost reminds me a little bit of that Jonnu Smith kind of role that the Patriots had for a cup of coffee here in New England. You see, even with the snap breakdown for him, almost as many snaps played in the slot, kind of flexed out wide as that F tight end as he would play in line. So less of an on the line of scrimmage blocking tight end, that Y type of tight end, and more of that move kind of tight end. He was very good at that here at TCU. You see here with over 5 yards after the catch per reception, that would translate well over into this Patriots offense, and something that they certainly haven't had with a guy like Hunter Henry after the catch there. So gives you a little bit more in that area as well. So I like DJ Rogers. I'm okay with either or in this position. Me personally, I would prefer them to take more of a blocking tight end. I think that those are more of a sure thing as far as what you're getting at this point in the draft. It may not be a sexy pick at tight end for the Patriots there with a blocking tight end, but projection on a 7th round tight end to be a key contributor in the passing game is a difficult thing here. So I like DJ Rogers. I'm fine with going with him. My personal selection would be Kasmerick here out of Ohio State, just because I know what I'm getting from him in terms of his effort and finish as a blocker with a late round pick in this draft. So, Tyler, I'll kind of leave it to you here on this one between these two tight ends. I think it's more of a stylistic thing here, though.
I think in the end, we're at the mercy of Mike Vrabel in Ohio State, so I'm fine with going with your guy.
All right, so we get the blocking tight end late, the receiving tight end early on, and that will wrap up our Patriots mock draft. A little bit of a shorter Patriots mock draft here with the A.J. Brown trade. Looks like we got a B on this one. Whatever PFF knows about these in terms of their mock draft simulations. I got an A+ on my fantasy football mock draft this season, and I didn't win the fantasy football championship. So what do they know about these grades here at this point? But love the Derek Moore pick. I think we did a great job of getting some value at the corner position before that started to fall off. We're still able to get a great linebacker option in the middle rounds with Bryce Betcher.
Yeah.
Attack that tight end position twice. Grabbed a depth safety, grabbed somebody that has some position flexibility that can help out a much thinner running back room for the Patriots. So I think as far as drafting for needs goes, we were able to do that without sacrificing some of our overall grades on positions of need for the Patriots. One glaring thing is I'm looking at this as a whole, Tyler. We didn't go with any offensive linemen here for the Patriots, and I think that's something. Yeah, that's something that could come back to bite us here a little bit. But I think that that's not necessarily a need for 2026 for the Patriots now that they've invested so much money in Elijah Vera-Tucker. You go and you move Jared Wilson to center. You're still going to get another year out of Morgan Moses. If you want to bring back Thayer Munford as a swing offensive tackle, you can do that. You can make it work with the pieces that you currently have on the roster for 2026. and then go back into next year's draft with a renewed focus on using a premium pick on an offensive lineman. I think once you trade out of the first round here, especially at the tackle position, that kind of reduces your ability to go out and find somebody that is going to be a projected starter for 2026 or 2027 for your team. Your thoughts there on us not taking an offensive lineman?
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with what was kind of going on in free agency. That, I mean, if you want to do a mock draft 3.0 on like the eve of the draft next month, I'm game for that. And who knows where we're going to stand on offensive linemen by then. The Elijah Vera Tucker deal, again, high risk, high reward. But I think, as long as he's healthy, this offensive line the needle seems to be moving in the right direction. I mean, in reality, I'm sure the Patriots will take someone somewhere in some position on that, in that area of their team. But I was a little shocked too. I think once we got to like the 5th round, I was like, wait, we're really not talking about anybody, a guard or a tackle. So that was something that kind of. But I think all the news about like tight ends and linebackers in the past week, it's maybe just in the zeitgeist for us around this to do a mock draft around this time. So yeah, but I love what we got on the board. Derek Moore, I'm glad we went with him. My UCF guy from last week, before we got on the air, I think you mentioned like, oh, he's probably already gonna be gone by the time we get to him. But I do like what I'm seeing here.
So that concludes our mock draft 2.0 officially. I'm sure that we are definitely going to make waves after trading for A.J. Brown and then not going out and getting an offensive lineman in general. So I do want to toss out one name in that 6th round range where the Patriots currently do, without all the trades that we made here tonight, have 4 picks in a guy like Micah Morris out of Georgia, who feels like he continues to rise up draft boards as an interior offensive lineman, described as a big-bodied bouncer, Tyler, and a guy with extremely heavy hands for his size, over 330 pounds. He's a guy that reminds me a lot of watching Mike Onwenu, but has a little bit more juice to get out into open space and move, and that's been something that we've certainly seen the Patriots targeting with their offensive linemen since Mike Vrabel took over, with guys like Will Campbell, with guys like Jared Wilson, and now this offseason bringing in Elijah Vera Tucker to man that left guard position for the Patriots offensive line. They want these athletic offensive linemen that can get out in space. With Morris, you get a guy that may need some rounding out in his game, but shows that athleticism and doesn't sacrifice size along the interior of the offensive line to do that. So if we were to have thrown him on there instead of maybe getting a running back here or something like that, would have really liked to grab a guy like Micah Morris late in the draft. But once again, that does conclude our mock draft 2.0. Guys, if this is your first touch point with us, would love to thank you for staying all the way to the end of another extra long version of the Patriots Roundtable podcast. For more from us on the Patriots, be sure to head over to the Patriots Roundtable website at roundtable.io and tell us what you think. Do you think that the Patriots will use draft capital this year to go out and acquire A.J. Brown? What will it take to bring him to Foxborough? Was that trade that we made for him somewhat realistic? And what do you think of the other picks? Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? Let us know in the comments section below or over on the community boards on the Roundtable website. We look forward to seeing you there. Alongside Tyler Geist, I am Eddie Murata. This has been our mock draft 2.0. We are signing off until next time.